Kernicterus? Well, it's a form of brain damage. It's a result of a high bilirubin, and the jaundice breaks through the blood-brain barrier and creates damage. Hi, my name is Anna Reuter, and it's been an interesting journey. I was privileged to see the Vaxxed movie when it came in May to Minneapolis, and I was aghast. I couldn't believe what I saw. And the biggest takeaway for me that day was that vaccines and drugs are in two different categories. That was like, huh. Anyway, then when the Vax team got their bus, and I discovered them on Periscope, I've been following them since. And last week, they had a wonderful guest, Marcella, and as she was revealing and sharing data, I started going, oh my. So beside me here is my son, who is 17, and he was born by a midwife, and the only, shall we say, intervention, I don't know, would be a vitamin K shot. That's it. He's had not a vaccine.
And the reason why you didn't want him to have vaccines because your other son was injured, yes?
Yes, I have a 30-year-old son, so when he was 15 months old, he got a golf-sized ball lump on his leg. And when I called the pediatricians to report that, they said, well, we will get the serum number and write that down. And I thought, whoa, this can't be good if they're keeping track of. So that was our last vaccination in our home as a result of that. Now, I have talked to that son who does deal with anxiety today, and he's 30. So I come because I love the Vax team. I love this movement because it's truth-bearing, and we need that in our world. We need to stop harming.
So you think the vitamin K has caused
Yes.
his issues?
Yeah, so Lee was so healthy. The first indication that there may be some issues was when he was 2.5. He only had about 50 words. So the family practice doctor we were going to said, well, let's look into his hearing. And we did, and he did have a hearing loss. And as we proceeded down that road with hearing loss, it's a very different kind of hearing loss. It's called auditory neuropathy, which means that sometimes you hear and sometimes you don't. So it was a really hard thing to figure out, because one day the doorbell would ring and he'd turn. He heard it. And the next day he wouldn't. He'd be like, I don't get it. You know, because the days that he turned, you'd be like, he doesn't have hearing loss. And the days that he didn't, you'd go, I wonder what's up. So we had a procedure called an auditory brainstem response test done, an ABR, where they sedate them and hook electrodes up, and it was kind of interesting because it was done at the University of Minnesota, and he laid on the bed, all hooked up, sedated, and the doctor's back was towards him, just on the computer. And the sedation wore off, and he woke up, and he said, he looked and he goes, hi, to the doctor, and he goes, oh, he definitely has auditory neuropathy. I'm like, really? So what's that? And he said, you know, your best bet with auditory neuropathy is cochlear implants. So Lee's a pioneer to cochlear implants. He got his first one in 2002 and his second one in 2007. And
has that made your life a lot better?
Yes. These are like the best at hearing devices. There's Cochlear, and there's a couple others that do the similar thing. And back to my mom.
Can you hold them up?
So the hearing loss was a result of, okay, so that happened. He got his first one when he was 3, his second one when he was 7, and at that time, then I met some other parents, and I was working with a now retired audiologist from Florida, and he he specialized in auditory neuropathy. And I met some parents at a conference that he did in Florida, and they said, you got to go and see this specialist in Virginia. Because it didn't matter where in Minnesota I went, I didn't realize that there's a good old boys club amongst doctors, and they cover each other's back. I didn't know that. That was really hard to learn. It was really, really difficult to learn. And that included the good old Mayo Clinic. Sad to say. So we went to Virginia to a pediatric neurologist, and that was when Lee got the diagnosis of kernicterus. And it was just this week, with all this information from following the VAX team, I said to my husband, I said, you know, if the vitamin K could have enough to create the damage, I wonder if the other kids who have kernicterus across the United States...
Do you want to explain exactly what that means?
Kernicterus? Well, it's a form of brain damage. It's a result of a high bilirubin, and the jaundice breaks through the blood-brain barrier and creates damage. Most of those kids, I think back in 2007 when he was diagnosed, there was probably 50-some kids across the United States. But that's because it gets covered up and it gets different diagnoses. You see that happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Says, because here we are 17 years later going, oh, vitamin K, thank you a lot. Not. Anyway, so my husband and I was like, what if those kernicterus kids, what if they ended up in wheelchairs because they continued on the vaccine mandatory schedule? Because some of them are in wheelchairs and they're either nonverbal, they're all highly intelligent, but nonverbal, and they have an upward gaze from the amount of damage. Yeah, I wonder about these other kids. I haven't been real involved because Lee is high functioning compared to the kernicterus community. So today was kind of an aha day. I'm just connecting the dots.
Well, thank you for doing that. Thanks for telling us about it.
Yeah, it might be a little window of the hearing loss in some of these kids.